How's it going? I'm Ryan with Equip to Endure. I've gotten a lot of questions about what kind of belt I've been wearing in my videos, and I thought it'd be a good chance to sit down and actually go through a couple different belts that I've had experience with. But let me just talk a little bit about what my uses are and what I think how it might work for you. First, let's talk about the rigidity of the belt. Depending on what you're going to use the belt for, the more rigidity is better. But if you're just going to use to hold your pants up, you don't need all that much. I'm going to use this one as an example, and this is one I just dug out of the closet. It's my old Marine Corps belt. I was issued this about 12 years ago in the Marine Corps when basically all I did with it was hold my pants up with it. You see it's not very rigid. It's made of, the buckle's made of aluminum, not very weight bearing. Not an overall, it's a useful belt for, you know, basic utility, but anything more than just holding your pants up, it's probably not a good tool to use. Next, this is probably the next oldest belt that Adam dug out for me. You can see it's been well used. It's probably was really rigid when he first got it, but it's lost some of its rigidity. It's a pretty good thickness of material, but a lot of the newer belts will have another layer in between, sandwiched in between, to give it a little bit more rigidity depending on what you're going to use it for. The buckle on it's steel, and it even has a D-ring for rappelling. That's pretty practical, pretty useful. These are really good belts. They will hold your weight. You know, I'm not sure if I'd use it specifically for anything, but you know, an emergency kind of situation for rappelling. But you know, it'll do the trick. Next, here we have a 511 belt. This is one of those examples of a belt that has a layer sandwiched in between the nylon. And this is really going to give you a little bit more benefit when it comes to having a holster on your belt, rigidity as far as, you know, not having a holster wobble as you draw the gun out. And also it has a steel D-ring built into its buckle. And again, same thing with the Blackhawk belt. This will hold your weight. You know, not the best thing to use if that's all you're going to use it for, but in a pinch it'll work. Finally, we have a high-speed gear belt with a Cobra buckle on it. These buckles are really popular right now. They started out as a buckle used for parachute harnesses and even rappelling and climbing harnesses. They're supposed to be gauged for a weight of about 2,000 pounds. I've never tested it, but that's what I've read. This one's actually made in Austria, but the belt is made in the United States. It's a really good belt. Its rigidity is not too much. In fact, the 511 one's probably a little bit more rigid, but I found the 511 one is a little bit uncomfortable for me, and a lot of it is because of the rigidity. This one's just flexible enough to be comfortable, and it's rigid enough to hold my gun, my holster on the belt really well. It comes with a steel D-ring, which is velcroed into place. It stays out of the way. A lot of problems I had with buckles like this is the space in between the end of the buckle and the end of the D-ring. A lot of times I'd have pants where it just didn't fit in between there. And I have had that problem with this once or twice, but I've adapted and it's pretty much worked every time. One disadvantage of the Cobra belt system is that the buckle is huge. In most of my pants, the buckle won't fit through the belt loop. So most of the companies have a system where it just unloops from the buckle itself, and every time I put my pants on, I have to unhook it from the buckle and loop it through my belt loops like that. If I'm just going to the bathroom or whatever I'm doing and I just have to unhook my pants real quick, then of course I can do the buckle real quick and there it is. But otherwise, it does get kind of tedious to have to lace my belt. It takes me a couple minutes to get it on, especially if I'm putting a holster on. So that is one disadvantage. There is a company called Bushido Tactical, and they've come up with a solution wherein the buckle, just like this, has a softer material here and is designed to pivot the buckle just like that to loop it through your belt loop, which seems like a pretty good idea to me. I haven't tried it out, so I don't know how well it works, but I've been dying to get my hands on one. One of these belts is 1.5 inches, and it's going to be up to you what width belt you get. But I always get a 1 3/4 inch belt because, one, I like a thicker belt. If I'm going to use a holster on it, I like a beefier belt, and it'll for the most part fit all of the loops on most of my pants. These three are 1 3/4 inch, and there is a pretty big difference as far as comfort's concerned, but once you get used to it, I think that that you won't want to go back to the 1.5 inch belt. All right, so if you're looking for a belt like one of these, there's a lot of manufacturers who are making belts now. The three that I have here that are pretty good belts, the Blackhawk, they always make pretty good ones. You know, they're imported. If that's important to you, then that's probably going to affect your decision. 511, they're also imported, and that might also affect your decision with them. But High Speed Gear, theirs are made in America, except for the buckle, which is actually made in Austria. And a handful of other companies like Bushido Tactical use sell the Cobra belts. If you are looking for one that's made in America, check out SpectreGear.com. They have a buckle similar to this and a belt similar to 511's. And they run probably anywhere between $30 and $50 for a good belt, depending on where it's made. Again, these belts are running between probably $60 and $80 and up, depending on the options and features you get for them. So they are a little bit pricey, but they're definitely worth it. They're really, really nice belts. All right, that's going to do it for me. If you have any questions, email me at ryan@equiptoendure.com. Stay safe out there. Remember, if you're not always prepared, you're never prepared.